Another one I wanted to quickly go over is using AI for assessments, and this is quite a broad one. So I'm not going to go into the depths of all the different areas, but the assessment cycle is essentially four different things. So there's the teaching aspect. So a couple of things you might want to do in there is sort of using AI to tailor materials and activities, using AI driven educational software. So we're going to find a lot of that coming our way, and use it to help you make lesson resources. So I think there's a lot of value in that, but that's not what this PowerPoint's on. Measuring, you could sort of automate assessment creation. So help you come up with actually the assessment criteria, the tests themselves, all that sort of stuff. And there is a possibility of using it for marking. But it's definitely worth knowing that most regulations state that nothing can be solely AI generated in terms of marking. So marks can be AI assisted, so you can use AI to help you generate feedback and things like that. But we've got to think of what's ethically right. If we're using AI to improve the quality of the feedback for the students, if we're using it to mean you can do feedback to a level you've not previously been able to because of time, that's fine. And obviously reducing workload is good, but what we can't do is not learn about the students. So part of being a teacher means we've got to learn about how good the students are at different things, and we do that often through the marking process. So we need to get the balance right. But these two highlighted areas are what I'm going to talk about in this little training session. Reflecting. So again, AI could be used to do analytics and things, do predictions, change the feedback loop. So integrate AI systems that collect student feedback and suggest areas for improvement. It's got possible uses in all these areas, and the planning and improve section as well. You know, you can look at it to look at an overview of curriculums, professional development, loads of different things. So AI's got use in all areas of the assessment cycle potentially, but we're focusing on the measure. Okay, so again, I'm going to go through some examples and show you things that we've done in the past. So on the left, we've got an assessment grid for a Key Stage 3 class that we've made previously. Okay, so with GPT, we can upload this document and say, can you write a range of different assessment feedback for students who complete the attached task, so at different levels. And it comes up with the thing on the right, which is actually quite useful when you're writing feedback to students. Doesn't mean that's all they get, but that potentially is a way of us increasing the quality of our feedback along with some personalization linking to their work. So that was useful. So as we're marking the work, we've now got some guidance on the type of feedback we could give. And again, you can have that dialogue and improve that feedback. We're just showing you some examples here. So assessment generation, this is actually straight out of my prompt engineering training. So if you've seen that, well, if you haven't seen it, please watch it because I think it's the best one. But this just shows you that you can actually use it to make questions like the questions that your exam board produces by giving it some example questions and mark schemes from the exam board. And you also need to give it like a task, a role, details and context, examples, an audience. All of these things, you don't need to give them every one, but the more of these things you put into a prompt, the higher quality the output's going to be. So again, example 3, we looked at this in the prompt engineering. So this is this idea of getting AI to answer questions, so that can create a task in itself that you can ask students to critique AI answers of questions, which is quite interesting because you can work out where it went right and where it went wrong. So that's quite a powerful task. Now, this one I think people will be interested in. It's this idea of refreshing old assessments. So every year, especially when you teach the same topics, you might have assessments that are like actually quite good. You might have assessments that are quite good because you spent a lot of time on them and you've taught the same topic again. Well, you can actually input them into AI. So you can say, here's my old assessment, attach the file, but I need a new networking topic test for A-level students. Use this as the example, but then come up with a new version of the questions and an assessment mark scheme for each one and things like that. It works quite well. I've done this before, and it came up with a new load of questions about the topics. I gave it It was quite good. I could go into more detail about how many longer written questions I want in it and all this sort of stuff, but you can get it to give a bit of a refresh. Or say you've got a student that did the topic test, wants to resit, so you want to give them a similar but different, really quick way of doing that. So refreshing old ones. And the final one is I have tried it for A-level marking, so I just wanted to share my experience on that. So I ended up making a prompt that took me probably an hour and a half to write. It was about 3 pages long. This was just my prompt. So my prompt was huge because I was trying to get it to mimic my marking. So I included things like specification extracts, marking criteria from the specification, a rubric that I'd given to the kids that was part of it. I also talked about my approach to marking, what I look for, because obviously specifications are a little bit woolly, and I'm lucky enough to have marked for the exam board, but there's a lot in how I approach it, which is actually wasn't listed in any of the things I gave it. So I talked about my approach, and I talked about the type of feedback I wanted to give to the students as well. I didn't want to give them answers, but I wanted to give them some guidance on possible improvements and things like that. And my output from it was surprising, actually. The quality of feedback, because I spent so long on the prompt, is a big reason, but the quality of the actual feedback it gave was really good, and the suggested improvements were really good. I had no issues with those at all. The grading was awful, though. It's worth saying that. So what I originally did is this piece of work was out of so many marks. I asked it to generate all feedback for the students, so giving them critique and things like that, focusing on positives and all that sort of stuff. But then I also asked it to grade it, give it a grade out of this, however many marks it was. That was quite wrong. Whether I could have improved my prompt to improve it, I'm not sure, but the grading wasn't like what I would have done. But the actual feedback was probably better than what I would have done, probably because of a time thing, how long it would take me to do that level of feedback. So it's probably better. But what it did is these pieces of work, when I've marked them historically, yeah, it took me an hour and a half or whatever to write the prompt, but the one piece of work, and I might have 30, 40 kids, would take me about 30 minutes to mark. So that's a lot of work. It could potentially mark that in 30 seconds now. Like I say, this was more of an experiment. I'm not saying I use this all the time now, but that was quite powerful. It was obviously time consuming to make that prompt originally, but then if I got it right, I could use that every year. So yeah, it's reusable every year. But then it's those sort of ethical questions on how well I knew the students. And again, there's got to be the human interaction afterwards. So just because it produced this feedback, I've still got to read the feedback and check I agree with it before it goes out to the students, because it's effectively going with my name on it. So I think we're all in a sort of period of learning where we need to learn where this fits, where this can add value to us, to the students. I feel like there's something in here, but again, it's probably a balance. But yeah, that's my experience. Like I say, I spent quite a long while experimenting with marking, and I was pleasantly surprised. I do think as it improves, we might find a lot of exams get marked this way in the future for consistency. But we're not there yet, but I can see it coming. So that's all examples of different ways that AI can be used in the assessment process, but focusing on the grading and the making of assessments. Okay, thank you.